Hello, Algebra 3 students. Welcome back. We're going to continue to look at domain restrictions here and evaluating functions. So simply here it says let g of x equal the square root of 4 plus x over 1 minus x. And first thing it says is find the domain of g. So again, there's two things that have to be true, right? Or we can't do, I should say. The first thing is that is a no-go, is we can't take the square root of a negative number. And the second thing that is kind of a no-go is that we cannot divide by 0. So in this case, we have both things happening here. So we have a square root in our numerator. So that tells us that our numerator has to be greater than or equal to 0, or at least what's underneath the square root has to be greater than or equal to 0. So when I look at 4 plus x, it's greater than or equal to 0. I get x has to be greater than or equal to negative 4. Now, when I look at my denominator, I realize that x cannot equal 1. Because if x were to equal 1, that would give us 0 on the bottom. So there's two things working against us. X has to be greater than negative 4, and x cannot equal 1. So if I think about this, right, so if I want to graph x is greater than negative 4, right, I would start at negative 4, I'd put a closed dot, and I'd shade to the right. And that would continue to be true, with the exception of this fact here that x cannot be 1. Right, so 1 might be something like right here. So what happens now is I have to take a second and I have to remove 1 from my domain and replace it with an open dot. So now x can be from negative 4 all the way up to 1, but not ever touching 1. And it can pick up right after 1 and continue on forever. So now when I look at my domain, I have two sections. I have this piece and I have this piece. Right, so this section, I can put an interval notation as negative 4, comma 1, and now it has to be a parentheses again because it cannot equal 1. And then the next section is, again, I'm going to pick up at 1, and I'm going to go to infinity. So if I want to find g of 5, I am simply going to now plug in 5 everywhere I see an x. So 4 plus 5 over 1 minus 5, which is going to give me the square root of 9 over negative 4, which is going to give me negative 3/4. Now when I move on to g of negative 2, I'm going to plug in negative 2, so it'll be 4 plus negative 2 over 1 minus negative 2. So I'm going to get square root of 2 over 3. I'm sorry, square root of 2 over 3. And that's going to be my final answer. Now, g of negative a, I'm going to plug in negative a, so it'll be 4. So we end up being 4 plus negative a over 1 minus negative a. And then when I simplify that, it's going to be 4 minus a over 1 plus a. And then lastly, negative g of a. So negative g of a. So I start out by plugging a in for everything. So that's going to be the square root of 4 plus a over 1 minus a. And now all that's going to happen is that's going to make the entire thing negative. So I just float a negative sign out front of the square root. And it'll be 4 plus a over 1 minus a. All right, so that concludes this video here. Again, looking at domain and input values of x. Please go ahead and watch the next video, which we are going to look at another part of functions. Again, thank you for taking the time to watch this.